to the Navigating the Cosmic Shift audio podcast with ancient philosophy mystic and energetic healer, Dale Allen Hoffman.
Episode 4.
I stepped back a few steps after being pretty much on the road constantly for almost 10 years, a lot away from family, in the mire of things, and you're sort of telling a place from 6 to 18 months in advance what you're going to talk about. And a lot of times they want you to talk about what you talked about at that other place that talked about you, and in the other place, and you find yourself kind of going through this rhythm, and you're sort of this repetitive pattern. And there's not a lot of, I do my best to kind of open up within that. And I tend to be a little unfiltered sometimes. On a Sunday morning, some places don't like the unfiltered thing as much. But yeah, watch what you say. No. So we're actually going to start with a tone. First, just from my little teeny tiny friend. I got this from the One Spirit Book Club like 25 years ago when I got this compilation of Thich Nhat Hanh books that I had already read, but then a bunch of these books of his were in this one hardcover edition. And this was free, so I put it to the side, never really took it out of the box. And then after about 6 months, I took it out of the box one day and I just struck it. It's amazing how things can do that to you, right under your nose. So, since a lot of people know me as the Aramaic toning guy, we're going to start with one tone just to open things up. Speaking of the feminine, with a small introduction. I don't use the word Lord unless I'm referencing the fact that I don't use the word Lord. If that makes sense. Lord, anybody know where the word Lord comes from? First, property owner. It has absolutely nothing to do with Christianity or Jesus whatsoever. No, the word did not exist 2,000 years ago. Property owner, it comes from Old into Middle English, 8th into the 9th century of the Common Era. And the original word sounded like this, hlofwerd. It meant loafward. It was the guy that owned the land, that was the ruler that would set out the parameters for society that people must live within. He was the bread giver, the giver of life, the power person at the top of the pyramid. And of course, all the serfs and peons, aptly named, were at the bottom. I don't use that word. What I want to do first, before we tone it together, is I want to tone the word Lord for you, what the actual original tone was in Aramaic in Yeshua's language, okay? I want to tone that sound so you hear what it sounds like. And I say this with as much empathy and compassion as I can. Probably 99.9% of all biblical language, Christian, theological experts on planet Earth have no clue about this that I'm about to reveal to you, okay? So I'm going to make the tone once, and then we'll do it together 3 times. This is what Lord actually was. When Yeshua would use the word, this is the word that fell from his lips. Maria. Very feminine. Let's make that sound 3 times. You don't have to last forever until you turn blue in the face and fall over. I won't judge you if you do. It happens from time to time. So just 3, Maria. Just get a good breath of air and make that sound, okay? Never mind all the stage fright or judgment about the quality of your voice, okay? Good breath. One more wide open, almost like it's an invocation, okay? Intriguingly, if you put the letter mem, the Aramaic letter mem, which is an M basically, at the end, you have Mariam or Miriam. This would be a good time to silence cell phones and things. Mariam, which is the name Mary. So, welcome to 2018. 2017 was beautiful. It was perfect. Everything flowed. Politics looked beautiful. Economy looked beautiful. Religion, theology, everybody got along and loved each other. 2017 in a nutshell, yes? You were given a great gift in 2017. And that gift, it actually applies with what? The 8th Beatitude from Yeshua, where he essentially says in Aramaic that blessed are you who are uprooted, dislocated, and reviled for your goodness and decency. It's kind of what 2017 felt like. People were saying, everything's falling apart, and I'm like, nothing's falling apart. It's actually that things are being revealed. Okay? I'll come back to this pretty often, actually, so I'm going to talk about the feminine, of course. The only time we see that any kind of a division between light and dark is when there's a veil present. That's your beliefs, that's your theology, your religion. When people come up to me and say, what is your faith? And I'm like, you'll have to let me know what faith means to you, because I know what it meant 2,000 years ago versus what people say it is today, which is what religion do you practice, which has nothing to do with faith. If you have faith in something happening, that's also not faith, that's belief. It's okay, it's good, belief is good. Faith, one of the examples I give is like Glenn Miller or Benny Goodman or Miles Davis or John Coltrane on a night when their soul was open. Carlos Santana hitting a note and Mikhail Baryshnikov, on a night when everything just lined up. That's what faith is. Ha'imanuta. To consciously live from the rooted center of your being, to express your deepest eternal nature. If you have faith in something happening, it is not faith. It is not faith. That's belief. It has nothing to do with faith. It's actually a lack of faith. So you say, I have faith this is going to happen. You have no faith. You're just relying on a belief. The reason I'm saying that is because we've been trying so hard to be spiritual. 2017 gave us this amazing gift of uprooting us, dislocating us, and kind of washing us across the desert sands. It's probably what it felt like at times. I didn't know Aurora had passed like half of a year ago. I didn't know that. I would need all my fingers and toes to count the people that I love dearly that we lost in the last 12 months. Almost myself just a few nights ago on the side of our mountain. There was just a small little scrub brush about this much of a root system that kept my Jeep from rolling over. It's funny, I called her and I'm like, can you call 911? And it's still wobbling back and forth. And I'm looking down on this like several 100-foot drop and a neighbor shows up and he's like, why don't you get out? And I'm like, And he like coached me out of the car, first put the window down and all that kind of stuff. But we're trying so hard to be spiritual. Do you know what spiritual means, actually? That word spiritus in Latin. It means, this is an example of it. Or it means frequency or vibration. That's the word spirit. Breath, heartbeat, sound, magnetism, electromagnetism. There's so many nuclear forces, solar energy, all these different examples are, the tides, frequency and vibration. What does it mean to be spiritual? It means to be open to the movement of air across your skin. I usually have this beautiful owl's wing that I do this with, but I'll fling my book at you instead. It's not quite as deep. But just being awake in the moment and feeling the movement of air across your skin. We have this strange idea that's been given to us by religion and motivational figures and New Age and rah-rah artists, as I call them, that there's this thing that we need to live up to. But, and I say this every time I'm here, and I'll probably say it every time I come back, from St. Francis of Assisi. He said, what you are looking for is what is looking. What you are looking for is what is looking. You're seeking your own divine nature, your own eternal essence. And what's happening now is we've been focusing on that for the last few decades in a big way across the earth. And what happens, kind of like, you've got a pot full of garbage and you start heating the pot, things start stinking for a little while because that stuff's got to burn off. And unfortunately, we start judging the things that stink as bad, so we try not to feel them or think about them, and we call them negative. And we call the things we like positive. So then we focus on the positive because we have to be spiritual. Rah, rah, rah. See my shiny teeth? Happy, happy, happy. And then what happens is we find ourselves in this stress pattern, not being able to measure up to what we're supposed to be in our true eternal nature. And I know a lot of people that have, it's been interesting to me to see it on social media because I fasted from it in a major way in 2017. So I was able to kind of step back and look at it. And I'll talk more about that in a few moments. But I find it really intriguing to see how hard we all work and try to be uplifting, positive, spiritual figures. It's an interesting thing to watch because I get more from is she snoring? No, her head came up. Hi, baby doll. I get more from just watching her play than I do from books. I don't really read many books anymore. I actually am in the process of one right now, but we've been trying so hard to match up. And I see this whole social media thing, actually, that we've been doing. Everybody's heard of algorithms at this point. Been hearing a lot about them for the last month. I want to share. Anybody ever heard the name Jaron Lanier? Jaron Lanier, this is a book called Dawn of the New Everything, Encounters with Reality and Virtual Reality. Anybody ever heard of a show called The Good Doctor? It's on TV. With Freddie Highmore. In my opinion, he'll win an Emmy, he already got a Golden Globe nomination. He might have won already. A couple of episodes ago, they were mimicking a surgery they were going to do in this virtual world. And there was this thing projecting, and they had goggles on, and they were going in to do this major heart surgery, and it was down to the millimeter. If it was a millimeter too much or too small of an incision or a threading back together, the patient would die. So they would go through it over and over on this virtual reality system that Jaron Lanier invented. He actually is known for pretty much popularizing the term virtual reality. He's not sure if he actually came up with that originally or not. Interesting book, though, because he also talks about algorithms. Actually, it's algorithmic behavioral modification. What is that? Well, it's called advertising. He talks about how inadvertently, basically the far left, the alt-left, created this system where they wanted everything to be free on the internet so you don't have to pay for it. And then what happened as a result was the only way that it could sustain itself was to put ads into that system. Now, when you start putting ads into the system so that these companies can actually create things like Facebook, etc., all of a sudden they start thinking thoughts like, how can we get more people to click on ads? How can we get a higher success rate? So what they start doing is they start monitoring everything that you're doing at all times. Anybody have an Alexa device from Amazon? If it's on in your house and you're sitting at the table talking about Bob Dylan, aspirin, sugar cookies, anything, it's recording what you're saying and it goes back to Amazon. It says it in the booklet when you buy it. Samsung And several other TV makers have televisions that listen to you 24/7, even if the TV's not switched on. Now, what I'm saying here, I'm not talking about gloom and doom per se, but every single thing that you do, anybody ever gone on Amazon and looked at something and you go on Facebook and there's an ad for it? What a miracle. How did they know what I was looking at? Gmail would be the worst Google basically gave the federal government free rein into their internet systems about 6 years ago. So what that means is everything you do when you Google something, if you have Gmail, it's always being watched and monitored. So imagine a system where they're watching what you're doing and there's a feedback loop that generates back to the advertisers to change the way they market to you in response to how you respond to ads. And then it keeps feeding back, and you've got a feedback loop where they start altering what they want you to see without you realizing it. It happens very subtly over the course of a few years. And then all of a sudden, you go on Facebook, and you're not seeing like your brother's posts and your father's posts or your children. You're seeing this other stuff that seems non-related. When they do it in a major way like they did 3 weeks ago, they had to roll some of that algorithm back. Because people were going, wait a second, I'm posting something here and I want to make sure everybody's seeing it. Okay, so what starts happening, you start having this artificial intelligence that's running your life, and then on the top of that, at least your online life, on top of that, you're trying to be more spiritual. You're trying to be positive. So of course what you're doing is you're feeding into those algorithms which loop back and literally alter what it is that you're seeing on a daily basis. Interesting little thing. I'm going to read some stuff in relation to that. But there's one thing. Well, let me actually hit this first. Which one's positive? The white. Which one's negative? The black. Which one's masculine? The white. Which one's feminine? The black. Do you understand how you've been duped in the last few hundred years? Now let me tell you something. First of all, positive is not good, negative is not bad. In the words of William Shakespeare, he said there is nothing good nor bad, but thinking makes it so. Technically, when the Middle English word translated, well, that says thinking, what it actually meant at that time was discernment, which could also mean judgment. There's nothing good nor bad, but judgment makes it so. A lot of times I'll pull a battery out and I'll show the positive and the negative. And I'll say, is there anybody here who can show me where that battery changes from positive into negative? Where in the middle? You can bring me the greatest engineer on earth. They can't, because there is no such thing. It doesn't change from positive to negative. What does that mean? It's not two different things. It's a singularity or a continuum. There's no masculine and feminine in a relationship. Nope. There's no good and bad. There's no light and dark. There's no good and evil. There's no past and future. Interesting little thing how these veils we're trying to live up to veils of being the whole. And what's happening is at the time of that, these veils are being made thicker by these media systems that are looping back everything that you're doing and actually altering your behavior. And when you're stuck in that loop and you have that addiction of going back, it's really hard to let that go. So we've been told positive's good, negative's bad. There's nothing true in that whatsoever. They're exactly 100% equal to each other. It's a 50-50 relationship. We should be using the powers, the terms empowering and disempowering would be a better way to put that. Or integrative and disintegrative. That which builds the system up, that which basically tears it down. Kind of like you've got a beautiful song, Tim's back there, all this amazing music, and it's all in this one beautiful, wide open major key, and then some kid walks up to the piano and just starts going blah, blah, in the middle of the song. That would be a disintegrative energy. Is that bad? No, not in any way, shape, or form. But you don't necessarily want a plunky little bizarro dissonant sound in the middle of your Chopin, if you understand what I'm saying. So we started judging that as good and bad. But what that's done is it's giving us this pursuit of physicality. It gives us a pursuit of the masculine, an imbalance. My perception of this bowl this bowl is masculine. My perception of it is feminine, my experience of it. Neither are independent of each other, but somehow we've been told that only what we can hold in our hand matters. How many people know that what happened on Thursday? That 90% of environmentally protected wetlands surrounding the United States of America were opened for oil drilling and fracking? While everybody's looking at social media, these little things tuck under the carpet and we don't even know they happen. What I'm saying here with a lot of this is, I find it intriguing with algorithms. Algorithms, there's one particular energy that is far more efficient in advertising systems. Do you think it's positive or negative? Do you think it's empowering or disempowering? Which one do you think would be more effective? It's the negative. Negative energy has as much as 160% greater efficiency compared to positive energy in advertising. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that would be? Fear. More interesting. Oh, absolutely. It's a huge valid point right there, because you get the positive and the negatives in that. If you get positivity, most of the negative people occasionally want to put something in, go toot your positive horn somewhere else. But, for the most part, they just kind of keep their mouth shut. But what usually happens is when you talk about something negative, the positive spiritual people have to come in and defend. And they have to fight against that. And it's an interesting thing, but it's even more elemental even than that, more biological, the limbic system. Hippocampus, something called the amygdala. Amygdala is a stereo set of glands that are in the human brain. That the limbic system is that reptilian, what I would call the serpent brain. It's the first strike brain. You have no choice over whether it's going to happen or not. You go into a haunted house and you know it's a haunted house and you know it's all fake. And you still walk down that dark hallway and someone jumps out and you go, "Ah!" And then what happens? You start laughing. Oh my God, it's fake. You knew they were at the end of the hallway. It's been too quiet for the last 10 seconds. And yet you go down the hallway and you're still, "Ah!" Have you ever seen Monsters, Inc.? Great movie. Great movie about, how they actually take the negative energy of human children, the monster world did, to harness that to power the monster world. And then, of course, by the end, they ended up finding out that it was actually happiness, ecstasy, joy that was even more efficient than the negativity. Maybe we'll find that. I don't know. But you don't really have a lot of choice in how you're going to respond in those kinds of reptilian situations. And I'm using the word reptilian on purpose right now, without going off on a side tangent. Those reptilian experiences, you don't really have a lot of choice there if you're concerned with trying to be positive, trying to be spiritual. You've got all these veils of spirituality, and I'm a spiritual person. So what Charlotte did, I'm going to ignore it, and I'm going to overlook it because I'm a spiritual person. And you think that's a real smile that she's got. But I'm going to ignore it because I'm really spiritual. So I got it all down. I got it figured out. I was just watching Ellen, see what her response to that whole thing was, but I think she's just trying to play it safe. So imagine this feedback loop system where everything's coming back. And we start to think that dream life that we're living is somehow real. Yeshua said in the Aramaic teachings, he said you cannot serve God and mammon. What does mammon mean? What'd you say? The other is a good way to put that. A lot of times people say it means money, and it doesn't mean money. Technically, what it means is materiality. It means to believe that this is real. And it's an interesting time in human history when we have a virtual artificial intelligence reality coming together with reality, what we think is reality, which this is also an artificial intelligence reality, if you haven't figured that one out yet. And all of a sudden the lines get really blurred and everything gets dumped out, and we start wondering why the world is going to, as Greg Braden's mom says, to hell in a handbasket. You know, like, what's going on? Why is it all falling apart if we tried for so long to be spiritual? We tried for so long to be upbeat. It's kind of an interesting little thing how that works out. You know, one of my fascinations for me growing up was with, who knows what you call it today? Native American culture, you know, the indigenous peoples of Turtle Island, you know, the nations, etc. I don't know if you realize, but what was it? A couple of weeks ago, it was announced that anthropologists had found the skeleton of a girl in Alaska from 11,500 years ago. The oldest known skull that north in our hemisphere. Kind of neat. And they're able to actually crack apart that DNA and follow that DNA string back. It's a funny thing because we talk about all this Caucasian and Mongoloid and all these, that doesn't sound like a good word, but all these different words we use for human DNA. But you know, it all goes back to one particular place. It all goes back to northeastern Africa. Every single strain. And there was a point where China a few years ago was trying to claim that they had unique DNA there, but they don't. It still came back to Africa. But there's other things that are being found now too, like down in the oceans. There was almost 24 deep sea creatures in 2017 that were found to have extraterrestrial DNA that was absolutely unequivocally proven to be not of this earth. And it'd be a good place to hide, yes? Nice little thing. And I want to say this too. We have so much of a thought system about extraterrestrial, but what about transdimensional? Meaning that they're right here slipping in and out. And now if there's anybody that has a tendency to being one of those ET transdimensionals, I'm not going to mention blue or water, but some people just seem to have a predisposition to particular subjects. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to point that way. Pam's got a big smile. But what I'm saying is we're at a crossroads right now, and it's really time for us, you know, in these last couple minutes I've got with you, it's time for us to start being as authentic as we possibly can, to let go of trying to live up to whatever these parameters we're supposed to be living up to, whatever these theological ideas, all these self-improvement ideas and rah, and just shut up for a couple of minutes and allow that quiet cosmic vibration, as Yogananda called it, of your soul to speak. And start allowing yourself to express from that. And start, you know, to call a spade a spade. Being spiritual doesn't remove accountability. The difference is that when you are awake in that manner and you seek to live consciously, you're not going in and basically privatizing let's just use that as an example, a penal system, privatizing it. You know, let's just use the example of the year 2001, privatizing that penal system and making other people pay for what you don't want to feel inside of yourself. And it just so happened that in the year 2001, when that system was privatized, more prison cells were built in that year in the United States of America than in our entire history as a nation. For hundreds of years prior to that, we did more in 12 months than our entire history up to that point. Then you need people in the system. You need people biting the hook. And what I'm offering is, you know, you have a choice as to whether you bite the hook. And you also have a choice as to whether, if you already have that hook in your mouth, to consciously take that out, take a couple of steps back, and start realizing that everything that you're seeing is a part of that dream. My book, Echoes of an Ancient Dream. I'm going to just read you something in closing from this, and then a little bit from Jaron's book. Al Gore invented the internet, right? So Jaron actually says in a recent interview and in his book that there's some truth in that. It was actually Al Gore's idea to have a system where everyone could communicate electronically across the earth, originally just for governmental systems, So there's some truth in that. But, Al's a little creative sometimes. Maybe it's that whatever it is that he puts in his hair, which he could probably loan some to old Trumpy. But Trumpy? I never said that. But what I'm saying is we've always had this pursuit of getting out and what was called a manifest destiny during the birth of our nation. Does anybody know what manifest means? We've got The Secret and all these different things that talk about manifestation. Is there anybody in this room that actually knows what the word manifest really means?
Make something happen?
Make something happen?
I said the same thing. Like I want to locate to an area and it's happening.
The word in the original word in Latin is manus festus. Manus means hand. Festus means obvious. Manus festus in Latin is as obvious as the hand. Manus is where the word human comes from. Human. Now we say human. Human, hue. Does anybody know what hue means? No. It's an expression of God. Ekankar. The word hue is, any artists in the room? It means quality or timbre. Quality of color. The human is that spoken quality of that one which has hands. Interesting little thing. Actually, a primates would be considered human in that sense. Interesting little thing. But what I'm saying is manifest destiny means, in other words, obvious destiny. And that was when the Euro-Americans were coming to take their Christianity and roll it all over these heathens all over the continent. All of these, what are some other words? Heathens? Savages is it. That's probably the great word. And they created this interesting little system, little iron backbone and iron internet that went all around our country so that they could take this good news across. But had a little bit of a side thing to it. Because while they were taking all of these riches and wealth and people to develop this country, I'll read you a little bit from this. It wasn't until after I graduated high school in 1990 that I found out that my U.S. history books were lies. It was a few years after. And I used to argue with my history teacher. He hated me. Hated me in that way. And he never even really spoke English. He spoke English with this fake Spanish thing, but he was no more Spanish than I was, being born, 20 minutes from Camden, New Jersey. Don't hold that against me. But, well, maybe that would work now. But what I'm saying is, I used to argue back and say, I don't think that's true. That Plymouth Rock thing, maybe. That first Thanksgiving, it never happened. There was no first Thanksgiving. All you have to do is study the actual history to find that out. But anyway, I developed this fascination because my uncle owned all these peach orchards. He was one of the largest peach farmers in the northeastern U.S. for many years in the 70s and 80s. And then, of course, that was when these different trade acts came and U.S. peach values plummeted because the U.S. government started, thanks to certain kinds of economics in the early to mid-'80s, I won't put any names on it, started shipping in Chilean peaches for a higher value than what American peaches were able to get, and it destroyed the American farmer. There's a great film to watch called Country with Jessica Lange. Right after she did Tootsie with Dustin Hoffman, she got offers to be in every big movie on earth, and she said, no, I'm going to produce this little movie over here first. Incredible film with her, Wilford Brimley, Sam Shepard, who just died. Anyway, I got this fascination with the sound of that iron horse in the middle of the night. And there was a particular afternoon that my best friend David, who lives right near that track right now in New Jersey, we went out there and I told him, we would sit there and put our hands on the rails knowing that the train was coming. And we would lay down with our ear and we would actually hear the train when it was miles away. So one day I got this idea. I'm like, put your heart on it. Lay your heart down on the rail. And he's like, and it was mud slop. It was like a big mess. And we're laying down in the mud. Well, he's mostly laying in the mud. I'm just like listening. And he puts his heart down. And I was about 4 feet away at the time. And it just became really still. And I told him, stop breathing for a minute. He's like, oh. And all of a sudden, I heard in the rail. Interesting little thing. A couple of minutes later, it was about 10 minutes later, when the train comes, we're screaming our brains out and everything. So I just wanted to read you a little passage from that to kind of encapsulate how we always have choices in how we move forward, how we act in any present moment. You're never, regardless of your limbic system and your reptilian serpent brain, you always have choices of how you respond in a situation. And if you bite the hook, stop, take the hook out, take a breath, and then change your course. Recalibrate, okay? Years later, meaning after that experience of the heart on the tracks, in my late teens, D. Brown's epic and heartbreaking tome, Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, became a holy consuming fire that burned its bittersweet, yet somehow beautiful light through my soul. It was while reading this much more historically accurate rendering of the ethnic genocide of the native peoples, of what would become the American continent, that I experienced a very hair-raising realization about my childhood experiments and yearning to sense a natural heartbeat through the backbone of the iron horse. I still have that fascination with the sound of a train. Woody Guthrie, John Denver, John Gorka, Arlo Guthrie, Johnny Cash. Hello, I'm Johnny Cash, and I'm wearing all black. It was this very 19th century iron internet that transported soldiers, 49ers, mountain men, beaver eaters, and more than a few Euro-Americans demanding their obvious manifest destiny as shareholders of the American dream across the quote-unquote new lands. These rails also brought out untold thousands of hunters and buffalo poachers with the sole intent of wiping out the Tatanka, the buffalo, the living heart of the Plains nations, in the hope that those very nations could be forced into surrender to their own obvious destiny, at least in the eyes of the self-proclaimed superior and civilized white man. They wanted to strip them away from their true home, the land of their ancestors in untold generations before them. The deeper archetype of my childhood, seeking to sense the pulse of a human heart coursing through the iron rail, is not lost on me. And I want to leave you just with a couple of sentences. Be awake. In our mad pursuit to be spiritual, interesting little things can be slipped right under our radar without us realizing it, and come in from behind in such a way that we don't realize it's happening. Kind of like putting a frog in a room temp water and then just slowly increasing the temp. I never tried that. I wanted to as a kid, but I think my mother would have kind of disowned me. But I thought about it a lot. And it makes sense in a lot of ways. What I'm saying is we are the ones we've been waiting for. We were brought here for the purpose of navigating what I call the cosmic shift. We are the ones we have been waiting for. It's us. We're the grounding rods of humanity. We're here meant to keep this boat on course and calibrated, but that's not going to happen if we're in a constant mad pursuit to become bigger, better, faster, more, and think that there's somehow something conscious or spiritual in that. As if who you are right now isn't enough, or who the people around you are right now somehow is not enough. So I just want to leave you with a couple of lines from Jaron's book. He said, our fate rests on human traits that have not yet been defined in scientific terms. He's talking about artificial intelligence and its power, such as common sense, kindness, rational thought, and creativity. While the AI fantasy is that we'll be able to automate wisdom at any minute, can we at least all agree that these qualities can for now only be harnessed by our systems, yet not created? They can't be generated as yet by our systems. The questions of our age are, can we see through our seductive information systems in order to see ourselves and our world honestly? without the addiction of the systems of communication? How bad do things have to get before tech culture decides it's worth challenging even our most cherished mythologies in order to dig ourselves out of our mess? What I'm saying is that the media stuff is fun, it's exciting. But there's something that's right here. Read some Viktor Frankl if you want to learn about what's right here, man. Search for meaning. There's things that are right here, just the pure pulsing beat of your heart, the rise and fall of your breath, the movement of air across your skin. That is quadrillion, was it 80 quadrillion? 1 in 80 quadrillion was the chances of winning both lotteries this past week. Just a number to throw out there. Had a lot of zeros. 4 sets of zeros, 12 zeros. But what I'm saying is, we're here to not bite the hook. I'm not necessarily saying we're here to push away artificial intelligence, not at all, or algorithms, no. Virtual reality, not at all. But to at least to be aware that if we're getting yet one more layer of a dream laid on top of what we haven't even yet recognized as a dream, how are we ever going to wake up to this one if we're already biting the hook of the next one that looks so damn enticing and seductive? So I'm just saying, if you could just take a breath, and when you feel the handshake, and it's not from caffeine, it's from that little digital device over there, it's an interesting thing. It's an interesting thing how almost like fentanyl volume addictive that can be. Fentanyl is what? 60 times as strong as heroin? Fentanyl just happens to be the stuff that's being laced in opiates and opioids. You know, the way the drug companies are have been paying doctors for years to push their opioids and opiates, and then everybody becomes addicted. Now people like my mother-in-law or my daughter who just had ear surgery that really need them for their pain can't get them. She's locked out. They're saying, no, your daughter's going to get addicted. Interesting thing. Everybody's already addicted on some level. So what I'm just asking you to do is just allow more space in your life, allow more moments to just sit and be. Take out a glass of maybe not red wine. Sit on the back porch. Sure, red wine, why not? Actually, that's a good quote to end it on, from Yeshua in the Gospel of Thomas. And Thomas isn't a person's name. Thomas means twin, Tumas in Aramaic. It means basically the mirror image of Jesus, like a deeper mirror image. He said, when I came upon them, they were all drunk. They were all drunk. Maybe when they shake off their wine and repent, they may repent. That word repent means 180-degree turn back. When they turn back within, maybe they will basically wake up and realize that they are the essence of the kingdom that they seek. And when he's talking about wine, he's not talking about grapes. He's talking about all of the drugs and all of the hooks that are dangled all around us, whether it's having to defend yourself against a spouse or a loved one or a child or a mother-in-law or a neighbor or whatever, and feeding that, and as spiritual as you are, and you bite that hook and you turn into that monster person that you don't like. Maybe a lot of that happens because you're trying so hard to be something that you already are, that when you do feel those things in you that are those things you don't like, you try to stuff them down, which intensifies them and makes those open up in your life. That's what's happening right now. That's how they hook us. But we're not here to be hooked. We're here to be conscious. We're here to be open. So just remember those moments of silence. Remember those beats of the heart, the movement of air across your skin. And all the other stuff, have fun with it. The key word is moderation. And see it for what it is. Anyway, I say thank you for being open. Namaste. Welcome to 2018.
For more information about Dale's work, including books, audio and video programs, live appearances and retreats, his in-depth one-on-one mentoring program, and to join the Dale Allen Hoffman email newsletter, please visit www.daleallenhoffman.com. Thank you for listening. and for your support of Dale's work.
Now